You're with Julian on the Brown Note and why Donald Trump isn't lying about winning the election. Headline grabbing quote. And a lot of you are probably thinking, why would he lie? Because there's no way he'd get away with it. Well, I'm going to go into that. The first thing I was going to touch on is some of his supporters have come forward and said the First Amendment is sacrosanct. Even if Trump's lying, he's protected. This is absolute bollocks. The idea is simple. I could say that I'm going to rob a bank, but if I actually try and rob the bank, that is the crime. It isn't him saying it, it's him trying to do it. He wasn't free speeching when he literally tried to block electors certificating the election or actually tried to overturn the results of the election. Those were acts that come under criminal statutes, not saying it, not the words. He's not being prosecuted for the words. Indictment number 57. So, why isn't he lying about losing the election and not losing it but actually winning it? He isn't lying to himself. And a lot of people are probably thinking, it's such a dumb thing to do because it's so accredited and so focused on by legal bodies, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of electoral officials presiding over these sacrosanct counts. And how would you ever get past any of that? And, you know, did he actually think that he could get away with overturning the result of the election? So he must have been lying, but that's not quite what happened. And to understand what happened, you have to understand a narcissist's relationship with the truth. And a narcissist is a real thing. It's not a state of mind. A narcissist is a particularly dangerous mental illness, especially for people that are in a relationship some way with a narcissist. And the narcissist relationship with the truth is not the same as you or I, where something happens, I could pick up this glass and throw it against the wall, we both saw it, so it happened, but I did it in a fit of rage, and you saw that happen. But to protect myself, it can't have happened. So I invent the truth, because to a narcissist, the truth is what they need. It isn't what happened, which makes them really, really dangerous to be around and in a relationship with, because it is the epicenter of gaslighting and making you think you're crazy. And trust me, I have. I know this backwards and forwards. The biggest stereotype about a narcissist like Donald Trump is that they are arrogant and that they think they're the best. And that is the biggest stereotype of narcissism. What is much truer to say than a narcissist is arrogant and loves themselves is that a narcissist is obsessed with themselves. In fact, they're obsessed with two things, which is how they feel about themselves and how they think other people feel about them. And that is their entirety of their worldview, which makes them incredibly dangerous, not only for gaslighting, but because they have no empathy for anyone else. They have learned empathy, because if they exhibit no empathy or feelings for how other people feel, they understand through empirical evidence that it's going to hurt them. So they will learn how to behave in an empathetic manner towards others, but they don't genuinely feel it. They're not going to look at, if I threw the glass against the wall and my partner was sitting there and she's crying, they don't genuinely care that they're upset. They might care about themselves, that upset is going to negatively impact their world. But they'll never believe that they were at fault for throwing the glass against the wall. They're incredibly fragile people that normally hate themselves more than the rational person ever would. So they build up this ecosystem around themselves where the truth is part of that ecosystem. So they need the truth to cohere with the worldview that they have, which is like a sleepwalker. You cannot wake a narcissist, otherwise it destroys so many facets of their psyche that are all constructs holding their fragile ego in place. The truth being one of them. The truth to a narcissist has no bearing on what is true. It has a bearing on what they need it to be at that moment. And that's another element of why it's so dangerous, because what they need at that moment might be different a month later. So a narcissist can be completely contradictory about the truth as well. They will say one thing is the truth, and they say it and believe it with conviction that a normal person doesn't have, which again makes them incredibly dangerous gaslighters, because a normal person has self-doubt. A narcissist has that self-doubt so buried that they can proclaim a truth that is a complete lie as fact in their head, and then a month later can proclaim the opposite. Trump's biggest fear going into that election was losing, because he would have found that a repudiation of himself, and he needed that result to be false. So when these people on his side come forward with these ideas of rigging and voting machines, that was gold for him, because it allowed him to know that he wasn't wrong. It was, for a narcissist, it must never be their fault. No matter what they do, it has to be your fault. It has to be someone else's fault. And he can believe that there was this fraud against him. But he wasn't lying, because lying to him is different to what it is to you or I. He believes, because he needs to believe, that he was fraudulently stolen the election. This causes a lot of trauma in people that have been in relationships with narcissists, and I know I've been there, because they have an absolutism about their belief system, because they need it to protect themselves from ever being in the wrong about anything. So when Trump lost the election, he doesn't possess the capacity to process that and take ownership of the blame. It's too hurtful for him. So he can run with this idea that he did win the election and it was stolen from him, because it protects this elaborate ecosystem he's been building up his whole life, and it cannot be shattered without incredible trauma to him. So that's why Trump isn't lying about losing the election, at least on the inside. He never processed whether he'd get away with it. He just can't process losing, because he is so weak inside. And narcissists don't have the same relationship with the truth as other people.